Hello and welcome to our third installment of The Mechanics of Poetry, where we tinker with everything poetic. And today's topic, raised in discussion after the last meeting, is who is your favorite poet? What a question to answer, because there's so many wonderful poets out there. I'm going to start off with the poet that really made me fall in love with poetry. Back when I was in college, back in around the turn of 1980, I was reading the Blue Bible, the Norton Anthology of Modern Poetry, that chunky blue book. Who knows what they're charging for that now in schools? It was expensive back then. I think back then it was like 40 or 50 bucks, book like that. Now, I could have brought that book out and showed you the poems that turned me onto this poet, but I would rather screen share them with you so you can really see his work. There's your first clue. And I also have some of his books. I'm a bit of a collector of his work. He published his first book in 1968. So he's a modern poet. And he passed away a few years ago. I don't remember which year exactly, but it was not that long ago. Maybe 4 years ago. And he lived in New England, and he taught there as well. And he taught a poet who was a member of our scene for a while there. I don't know if anybody remembers Jeffrey McDaniel. He was an LA poet, and then he headed back east and has settled down there. And it's so fun to see the lineage from this poet to that poet. You can see the influence. And I remember loving this poet's poems and wanting to try so hard to write like this poet, and I just couldn't do it. This poet's pretty unique. All right, time to let the cat out of the bag. Poet is James Tate. This is his book from 1968. You've heard of James Tate? Yes?
No.
No, yeah. There's so many poets out there. How can you know all of them? It's impossible. But his first book was published on the Echo Press, distributed by Norton. So that's pretty lofty start, right? And his second book gives you a clue as to his sense of humor, called The Oblivion Ha Ha. Right, he made that a year later. And that was published by Little Brown and Company. Little Brown and Company. Oh yeah, so this guy hit the big time pretty fast, understandably so. And my favorite book by him is from 1976. I love this book so much, I wrote 2 centos from the first line, well, one cento from all the first lines in the book, and the other centos, all the last lines in the book, in order. And they work. I mean, it's just how unique this poet writes. You'll see in a moment, but this book, my favorite, Viper Jazz. And that's on Wesleyan University Press of Connecticut. That's the vibe there. That's the vibe. He's surrealistic. He's really a surrealistic poet. And he was the first poet that I read that had a big sense of humor, a large sense of humor. Even when it came to difficult subjects, like this first poem I'm going to share with you. Hit the old share screen. There we go, there he is. So James Tate was born in 1943, and you can see that this poem is for his father who died in 1944. So he never knew his father because his father was a pilot in World War II and got shot down. So he just never met his father. That's why this poem is called The Lost Pilot. It's also the name of his first collection, The Lost Pilot. I'm going to read it to you now. Your face did not rot like the others. The co-pilot, for example, I saw him yesterday. His face is corn mush. His wife and daughter, the poor ignorant people, stare as if he will compose soon. He was more wronged than Job. But your face did not rot like the others. It grew dark and hard like ebony. The features progressed in their distinction. If I could cajole you to come back for an evening down from your compulsive orbiting, I would touch you, read your face as Dallas, your hoodlum gunner, now with the blistered eyes reads his Braille editions. I would touch your face as a disinterested scholar touches an original page. However frightening, I would discover you. And I would not turn you in. I would not make you face your wife or Dallas or the co-pilot Jim. You could return to your crazy orbiting, and I would not try to fully understand what it means to you. All I know is this: when I see you, as I have seen you at least once every year of my life, spin across the wilds of the sky like a tiny African god, I feel dead. I feel as if I were in the residue of a stranger's life, that I should pursue you, my head cocked toward the sky. I cannot get off the ground, and you passing over again, fast, perfect, and unwilling to tell me that you were doing well, or that it was mistake that placed you in that world and me in this, or that misfortune placed these worlds in us. That was my first taste of James Tate. Wow, heavy poem, but at the same time, he has this ability to almost make you giggle about some of the imagery. It's just so unexpected. Let me give you one more example. I'm going to give you two more examples, really. We're going to have a 3-example limit here today. Right, so, and here's another thing to remember, Chuka, when you want to share the second poem, you bring the first poem down, and then on your computer, you have to bring up the page that you want, so it's up. Okay. And then you go back to Zoom and hit screen share, and the poem you want is there to choose from, and you share it. Now, this poem has far greater sense of humor. This one is just one of my favorite James Tate poems, but I have so many favorite James Tate poems that are my favorites. This is one that is probably one of his most famous in terms of humor. It's called The Blue Booby. The blue booby lives on the bare rocks of Galapagos and fears nothing. It is a simple life. They live on fish, and there are few predators. Also, the males do not make fools of themselves chasing after the young ladies. Rather, they gather the blue objects of the world and construct from them a nest. An occasional galois package, a string of beads, a piece of cloth from a sailor's suit. This replaces the need for dazzling plumage. In fact, in the past 50 million years, the male has grown considerably duller, nor can he sing well. The female, though, asks little of him. The blue satisfies her completely, has a magical effect on her. When she returns from her day of gossip and shopping, she sees he has found her a new shred of blue foil. For this, she rewards him with her dark body. The stars turn slowly in the blue foil beside them like the eyes of a mild savior. Yeah, so I really got off on this poem, on his poetry. It's just it's image rich, and it's this particular poem is really, it's facetious, right? It's not as personal as The Lost Pilot, but still something moving about it, because it's like personal is universal, or is it the other way around? And some of his poems are not so easy to get to because there's a website called Poem Hunter. You have to be a member to be able to view everything. So I wanted to show people the wheelchair butterfly, but you have to be a member to show it. I didn't have time to become a member and do this, so lack of foresight there. But this poem here, the third and final one I'm going to share, is really turning up the humor button all the way to 10. Okay. Sure. This is called Teaching the Ape to Write Poems. They didn't have much trouble teaching the ape to write poems. First, they strapped him to the chair, then tied the pencil around his hand. The paper had already been nailed down. Then Dr. Bluespire leaned over his shoulder and whispered into his ear, "You look like a god sitting there. Why don't you try writing something?" That's it. It's like it's a joke poem, humor. And so that resonance from things like Dr. Bluespire, this is the kind of wackiness you would find in his poetry. And I remember trying to emulate from Viper Jazz. If the poem comes up, it comes up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah, here it is. Of course it comes up. It's practically grooved into the book. It's an extremely short poem here. And I purposefully, I remember back in 1980, I was in Dr. Henry Coulette's creative writing class at Cal State LA. And, you know, I had read this poem because I bought this book. I think I bought it at the student store at Cal State LA. So it was like $1.50. Right, books were cheaper back then. And there was this, it was like one of the shortest poems in the book, right? And I just told myself, I gotta try to write like this guy. And I did write a poem that had a falling leaf in it because I got the idea from his poem. So I'm gonna throw this poem in as a bonus. It's not too different from what you've already heard. The title of the poem is Dreamy Cars Graze on the Dewy Boulevard. And that's in quotes because it's the first line of the poem. Dreamy cars graze on the dewy boulevard. Darkness is more of a feeling inside the drivers. The city is welded together out of hope and despair. The seasons pass imperceptibly, more of a feeling inside the street cleaners. Come quick, Hans. A leaf is falling inside of me. So that's the magic that made me want to try to create that magic. The surrealism, the humor, and even being able to say something about society. That's the mixture of James Tate. And from then I've graduated on to other poets like Gregory Corso and the Beat Poets, and just everything unraveled, right? Robert Frost and some other poets that you're going to hear about today. Yeah, because I already got a preview of one of them because I was teaching screen share. I'm hoping that person will be willing to go first. Let me get my poem off here. And I'm hoping Chuka will be willing to go first. Are you?
I can
Okay.
go.
Let's
But I'm not doing my
put your new knowledge to the test. You're not hearing.
oh, just a
Oh,
minute.
hey, Bo's here. Okay, wonderful.
Oh.
There we go.
Can you guys hear me?
Hear you very well. And but the poem, we're not seeing all of the poem. Maybe you have to open your window. There we go. Open it again. Do what you did, do it again. Yeah, there it is. Okay, go ahead.
So I chose Edna St. Vincent Millay. I have several favorite poets, but today I really was thinking about this poem, which I love. And I really love her because I read a biography of her. And also, she went to the same college my son went to. And so I've been to that college. It's Vassar. You know, what's interesting about her is, have you ever wondered why her middle name is St. Vincent?
Why?
Because she was born at a hospital called St. Vincent and they saved her life.
Oh my.
It was either her life or her mom's life, but I think it was her life. I think she had some kind of health issue and they really helped her. So now I might be wrong, so you better research that, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. And I really like Vassar and Smith. My kids, my son and my went to Vassar, my daughter went to Smith. and another incredible poet went to Smith, and that's Sylvia Plath.
Mhm.
So I really like the idea of these poets going to these Seven Sisters colleges where they were prized as who they were. They weren't ignored because they were women's colleges, and women's colleges love women. And when I went to visit those colleges, I could tell that they really prized women. They loved my daughter, and they loved Peter too, even though he wasn't female. By the time my son went there, it was a male and female college, but mostly women. So I chose this poem, and there's a lot of repetition in it, which I really like. It almost becomes like to me like a song with verses and then a chorus. I will read it. Recuerdo by Edna St. Vincent Millay. We were very tired. We were very merry. We had gone back and forth all night on the ferry. It was bare and bright and smelled like a stable. But we looked into a fire. We leaned across a table. We lay on a hilltop underneath the moon, and the whistles kept blowing, and the dawn came soon. We were very tired. We were very merry. We had gone back and forth all night on the ferry, and you ate an apple and I ate a pear from a dozen of each we had bought somewhere. And the sky went wan, and the wind came cold, and the sun rose dripping a bucket full of gold. We were very tired. We were very merry. We had gone back and forth all night on the ferry. We hailed good morrow, mother, to a shawl covered head, and bought a morning paper which neither of us read. And she wept, God bless you for the apples and pears. And we gave her all our money but our subway fares.
Oh, definitely in my top 100 poems.
I love it. There's color in this poem. As an artist, I noticed the color. So when you see the stable and night, it's very dark. It's brown and it's black. And then the dawn is coming, right? And then you ate an apple and I ate a pear. That's red and yellow. And then suddenly the sky goes wan. So you get a little bit of color, but then it goes absolutely pale. And then the sun rises dripping a bucket full of gold. So you've got this darkness and you got a little color, and then suddenly it goes completely white, and then this incredible color comes. Well, after the color comes, then they run into this lady who's got a shawl on her head. Usually, poor ladies with shawls on their heads don't have a bright colored shawl. It's a dark colored shawl, like a gray or a brown. It's a muted. What I'm saying, it's a muted. So that's kind of echoing the stable and the night. But then suddenly they give her the apples, which are red, the pears, which are yellow, and the money, and that's green. So there's all this color. It like repeats the. Do you see
It's
what
like
I'm saying?
there's three paintings. This poem is like three paintings.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You got some more, Edna?
No, because you just taught me how to do this, so I was only prepared with one.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. All right. And I mean, legendary. And there's a musician named Saint Vincent. Maybe she got her name from Edna.
Hmm.
Or maybe she's an Edna fan.
Well, look up why she is named Saint Vincent, because I am not sure that I said that correctly, but it's something in their family where they wanted to honor the hospital where she was born.
I think this is 100% true. I'll tell you why. Because my birth middle name, not Kingfisher, that's not my birth middle name. That was given to me by my grandfather years later when I was like 8 years old. But when I was born, my middle name was Craig, and my delivering doctor's name was Dr. Craig. And so my mother named me with Craig in the middle to commemorate the doctor who miraculously helped birth me.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
nice.
So I feel I have something in common with Edna St. Vincent.
Yes. I
Wow.
I really like the way her middle name is Saint Vincent because it's kind of like there's 2 parts to it. Because most people's middle name is just all one thing, not with a saint in front of it. I think that is so cute.
It's very distinctive. The name Edna is kind of an ordinary name.
Mhm.
St. Vincent, that is very particular.
Her name is like a poem.
Yeah, makes me wonder if she ever wrote about her name.
So you know this line, "And the sun rose dripping, a bucket full of gold." It almost sounds like I heard that somewhere before, because I only read this poem in the last year and a half, maybe.
Hmm.
But I don't think I ever heard it before. It's such a strong image that it feels like I heard it before. And
It
I
feels
think,
chromatically pure, right? It's a pure color.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that it should give us the boldness when we're writing our poems to say something like that, just to say, what does the sun remind you of? You could write a bunch of phrases down and see if something really good comes out, or in whatever it is. It doesn't have to be the sun.
Mm.
And it says it rose dripping. Not only was it a bucket full of gold, but it was actually dripping gold.
Yeah, that is spectacular. That almost makes me want to become a painter. Yeah, that's not my area of expertise by any shot of the imagination. Thank you, Chuka. We're going to move on to our next poet. I didn't designate who would go next, but I'm hoping it will be a male. So maybe should we do first come, first serve? That would make Chris Askew. Chris's
Okay,
turn.
I'm gonna get rid of this.
There we go. Yeah, my favorite poet, again, was the tough one. It's a long list and all for different reasons, like James was saying. The came up with two for different reasons. Um, the first one in the chronological order, uh, both when they lived or are living and when I encountered them. First one is Gerard Manley Hopkins. Uh, as I was and still am really impressed by his really bright images and his very pointed, um, well, you say, uh, lack of grammar, um, his freedom from the constraints of proper language, I guess is a better way of saying it. The which helped me in forming my own sense of how poetry could be written. Because I started my own poetry by copying everybody else's forms. Like I said last week, I did a lot of sonnets um, and a lot of other things and trying old forms, things like that. But while that was fun as a technical challenge, it was not particularly uh, appealing to me. So I liked the freedom. I'm going to read one poem by him and then the other by my favorite person. Let me, sorry.
Chris is a veteran of screen sharing.
Yeah,
I had great faith in Chris's screen
how
sharing.
often I've done this and how often it still takes me more time than I would like. Okay. I move my windows around and I have two screens, so very often things get
Yeah,
easier.
yeah.
Okay.
The one you wanted. Wow.
Um, you'll see when I read this, if you don't know it already, just what I'm saying about both the freedom and the brilliance of the imagery. The wind hover. I caught this morning's minion, kingdom of daylight's dauphin, dappled down drawn falcon in his riding, of the rolling level underneath him, steady air and striding. High there, how he rung upon the rein of wimpling wing in his ecstasy, then off forth on swing. As a skate's heel sweeps smooth on a bow bend, the hurl and gliding rebuffed the big wind. My heart in hiding stirred for a bird, the achieve of the mastery of the thing. Brute beauty and valor and act, oh, air, pride, bloom, here buckle, and the fire that breaks from thee then, a billion times told lovelier, more dangerous, oh my chevalier. No wonder of it, sheer plot makes plow down Cillian shine, and blue bleak embers, oh my dear, fall, gall themselves and gash gold vermilion.
Uh, it's a sound festival. It's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's part of um, what really gets me is the sound. It's one that you really have to read out loud or at least sub-vocalize so you feel it in your mouth as well as in your brain. My favorite poet is Kay Ryan.
Okay, so you got to close this window to get the other poem. I think you have to close the window and then reopen with the other page. I think. Let's see.
Actually, I didn't have to, but it disappeared. So then it
See.
stopped again.
Yeah, so you still have the same one. So you got to put up the other window, but you have to, I think you have to close the share, then put up the window, and then, well, no, there it is. There it is. Okay.
Is that really sharing the same window, switching between tabs?
Okay.
Kay Ryan, excuse me, who I just discovered or who was shown to me about 10 years ago, is still alive. She was a teacher of English at the College of Maureen. She was a poet laureate from 2000, poet laureate of the United States, 2008 2010. She got a MacArthur grant, and things that I like about her are that her poems are quirky, illuminating, and short. I appreciate short poems. I have a really hard time with long poems. I admire, but don't particularly long to be somebody like Homer or Swinburne or Milton. Her poems are succinct. They're often playful, which partly attracts me too. They are often or more often serious or have serious contact with them, but in most often are both serious and playful. She is distinguished, her stuff is distinguished by internal rhyme as well as being short, short as in short lines and in number of lines. She coined the term recombinant rhyme for the kinds of rhymes, as she said, rhymes that are at the wrong end of the line or in the middle. She also avoids what she calls confessional poetry. She very seldom uses the I in any of her poems. She does it every once in a while. So this is a short poem, How the Birds Sing. I mean, short even for her. That gives you a sense of how she writes. How birds sing. One is not taxed. One need not practice. One simply tips the throat back over the spine axis and asserts the chest. The wings and the rest compress a musical squeeze, which floats a series of notes upon the breeze.
Oh, oh my. You know, I think it's harder to make a good short poem than it is to make a good long poem. It really is. And this is
Yeah,
a good short poem. Yeah.
it really packs it in. Uh, One thing caught my attention. This is one of them, but the poems she did are similar. She was kind of going through a dry period. She couldn't think of things she wanted to write. So she created a book of poems by reading the I'm forgetting it. The Book of Records. Uh, no, Ripley's Believe It or Not. That's what it is. So she took themes out of Ripley's Believe It or Not that made a very interesting series of poems where she's commenting on or using to make points things that are really fantastic or really far out there. And the last one I'll share is the one poem that she had printed in uh, the New York Times, but it also gives a sense of what you can do. This is called The Edges of Time. I'm sorry, not the New York Times, the New Yorker. It is at the edges that time thins. Time which had been dense and viscous as amber suspending intentions like bees unseizes them. A humming begins, apparently coming from stacks of put off things or adjusted back. A racket of claims now as time flattens. A glittering fan of things competing to happen, brilliant and urgent as fish one sees retreat.
Well, it's got that, like you're saying, the tight compactness of the language.
Right.
It doesn't waste words. Yeah. Remarkable. And the sound.
But I chose this one too. It's a really good example of the way she uses rhyme. Um, it's a rhyming poem. There's lots of rhyme in there, but very little that actually hits the end rhyme, and it certainly avoids any kind of sing-songy that might come from repeated end rhyme.
I'm also where she's very knowledgeable about how the poem looks on the page. In that bird poem, the first three lines of the poem all have the word one, 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 one. And
Mm-hmm.
that was obviously by conscious design. And in this poem, you've got the three A's, right? The three A's. That also is conscious design on her part. Get
Right.
that? Yeah.
I noticed from when you shared about Mr. Tate that his lines are about the same length. Normally, that looks like Kay Ryan's on it, but his style is more discursive. Um, he actually makes sentences and things like that. And I've written poems both ways. Uh, I think in many ways it depends on what you're saying and how well it works. But I find that the short lines are helpful not in just um, the way they fit or look on the page, but how they help the reader read it with the emphases that you're trying to put in there. So,
She's even giving the least significant word in this poem significance by putting those A's where they are. It's meant to be read out loud. A
mhm,
humming begins, a racket of collapses. So even the A's have value.
exactly. That's great. Anybody wants to explore? This is my favorite book of hers. Whoop,
Oh, there we go.
the best of it. Like Kay Ryan, which is exactly what it says. It's a collection of mostly previously published poems. Um, And one thing I found about her is she's one of the few poets where I can just sit down and read through her book. It's that entertaining. And there are not too many like that. Even books that I've bought and paid for that I can sit down and just read.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm going to slide over to Jackie now. Jackie, going boy, girl as much as I can. I don't know why. First, in order of appearance, I don't know, but Jackie, are you ready? Oh, where is Jackie? Oh yeah, we had to cut the screen share. There we go. There's Jackie. Okay, are you ready?
Oh, I'm going to share, okay, a poem by a very well-known poet. Let me see. Sylvia Plath. I think everybody has read her poems. I'm going to go to document. Okay. Okay. Mirror.
Jackie's come a long way with working with minimal technology. She's able to.
Yes, but I think I have to go back close. I have to do it again. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead. That's all right.
Share.
You can talk. We can hear you if you want
Google
to talk
Drive.
while you're doing it. Go ahead and start talking.
Google Drive. Oh, okay. Here it is.
Here's an answer from Google.
Okay.
The machine speaks.
Okay, it's gonna take a while because I didn't download it. So I have to get it from Google Drive instead of downloads.
Well, we'll set you back a little then. Is
which
that okay?
takes a little while.
Right, and I'll jump
Okay.
to the next one. Or are you ready? Or move on?
Okay. Maybe it might take 1 minute.
Okay. You want to talk about the poet before it comes on?
Okay, she committed suicide, which made her like more of people more interested in her life than her poetry. And also her poetry changed from her earlier works to her later works. I think you might have to go on to another person because I'm still trying to figure this out.
Okay, we can do that. Next up would be James Coates.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I've been thinking a lot about favorite poets. It's hard to decide like who is my favorite. So what I did was kind of categorize certain like things. And so I feel like I have a favorite page performer and a favorite stage performer, and a man and a woman for each of those. And so let's start with my favorite stage performer right now, alive, is probably Rudy Francisco. I am currently in one of his classes he's teaching right now, and it is fantastic. His ability to communicate and understand people in a way that people can be seen. It also doesn't hurt that he is Belizean and I am Belizean, and so we share a common heritage in that respect. But what I appreciate so much about his poetry is his ability to put humor into serious topics, and to like be authentic and expressing himself. And I feel like many people relate to him, and that's why he's quite popular nowadays. Conversely, a woman poet that I found like stage presence incredible this recently during pandemic time is Bridget Bianca, and she just brings so much energy and like life and emotion and personality in her poems and into her performance that it's hard for the crowd and for myself not to like get excited in what she has to share and really feel like I'm there. Um,
Did I hear her name one more time?
Bridget Bianca.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm gonna look up videos of these. Well, I've seen Rudy Francisco's videos for years and years. He's from San Francisco, is that correct?
San Diego.
San Diego. I knew it was saying something.
Yeah.
So he's a
So-
legend already in schools. Many students have known about Rudy Francisco. But Bridget Bianca?
Yeah, so she is a LA South Central based poet and professor. And then so for print poetry, I have a favorite writer. Donnie Jackson would be my favorite for print. His book Boy is incredible. He just has a way of language that feels elegant, and like he knows what to say in a way that is like my heart. Like, how do you even think of putting those words together to make people feel those things? And so I was fortunate enough to take a workshop with him and at what is the Poetry Lounge in Los Angeles, and fantastic poet.
There's a regalness to his language. It's just marvelous, just marvelous. He's effortlessly eloquent.
Yes, and there's something about like when I read it, I'm like, I need so much more life experience to be able to talk in a way, because it's life experiences that is able to help him craft the poetry in that way.
Yeah, he has incredible life wisdom. It's really true. I've enjoyed so much reading him putting up his poems on Facebook for years and years. I've just been a Donnie Jackson fan. And I've always told him when I grow up, I want to be able to write like Donnie Jackson.
Me too.
Yeah, because he's inimitable, really. You have one more poet, right?
Yes. So for the page, a woman is Patricia Smith. And so there's something about the real rawness and not being able to like, not having to sugarcoat the message in her poems, and the work that poetry is supposed to be doing in discussing heavy topics in a way that feels like you can't like ignore it. You have to pay attention. And again, just like Donnie, the use of language in her poems, it's hard to compete with.
Well, she's been doing that for a long time too. I remember reading her decades ago, and her poetry was so powerful. And like you say, you cannot ignore it. She was one of the first poets to call things out that needed to be called out.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, we're gonna get an example of her up too.
Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna share as an example from her. And then I just want to briefly say the poet that got me into poetry was it's passed away, is Edgar Allan Poe. And so most of my middle school, high school poetry resembled that, like his poem Annabelle Lee, that trying to write a sort of love poem that has similar rhyming is very influenced greatly my first poetry collection.
It's a very good place to start. Very good place. So you have some of their poems to share?
Yes.
Oh, let's do that.
Let's pull that up.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see that, all right? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So this is the hip hop gasol. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
I've heard two pronunciations of that word, guzzle and gazal.
Guzzle. Yeah, I think
I've
guzzle
heard
is the
Maureen
right
Hurley,
one.
she might know.
You know, we didn't talk about them that last week in poetry forums, but it's an interesting form. Okay, let's me read this one. Gotta love us brown girls munching on fat, swinging blue hips, decked out in shells and splashes. Lordy, bring them woo hips. As the jukebox teases, watch my sister's throat the heartbreak. Inhale baseline, cracking backbone, and singing through hips. Like something boneless, we glide silent, sweeping tween floorboards, wrapping around the hymns and who we clanging them glue hips. Engines grinding, rotating, smoking. Gotta pull back some. Natural minds are lost at the meager sight of ringing true hips. Gotta love us girls, just strutting down Manhattan streets, killing them manfolk with a dose of those stinging view hips. Crying about getting old, Patricia. You need to get up off and got off what God gave you. Say a prayer and start slinging Q hips. So
That's good. That's good.
I just like this is a fun poem about just dancing and bodies, and that's one of my favorite from hers. Another one, Barry. This one she may be able to read herself. If we can give that a try, let's see. And let me know if you can hear it. Like thumbs up.
Barry came from a story that there was no funeral or cemetery personnel to bury bodies in New Orleans, so that families were taking on the task of burying their own dead. Buried, there's nothing but mud. The ground looks dry and firm, but underneath is a stew of storm. Stout shovels, rusted, grow gummed and heavy with what I heft and rearrange. Progress is slow. The sun so often steams me shut, and I have to stop to gulp sugared bites of tea, flick away sweat with my swollen fingers, swat hard at sluggish flies who hover like they know. And when I start again, there's a rhythm to it, some ticking jazz that gets my square hips involved. I craft a chant purely for downbeat. Plunge, push, lift, toss it. Plunge, push, lift, toss it. My untried muscles blaze, joints click, pulse clutches my chest. Whole clocks later, I pause to relish the feat, to marvel at the way I've compromised the earth. How I've been that kind of God just for a minute. But only time has moved. It's like trying to reach the next world with a spoon. My boy would have laughed. Daddy, you better sit down and watch some ball game. And we'd settle, Sunday lazy, his squirm balanced on my belly. He needed what I was and what I wasn't. Giggling in little language, he lobbed me the ball, soft. Walked slower when I was at his side, shared puffed white bread and purple jelly. He waited patiently for me after dark while I shuffled piles of books, looking for a bedtime drama of spacemen or soldiers, some crayoned splash to wrap his day around. But every night, When I opened the door to his room, all I saw was a quivering mountain of Snoopies, Blues, and Scoobies. Underneath them, his happy body could barely cage breath. Giggles unleashed his toes. My line then. Where are you? Plunge, push, lift, toss it. Plunge, push, lift, toss. With the dirt balanced high, screaming my shoulder, I think hard on those nights of tussle and squeal. I want to feel his heat and twist in my arms again. I have to dig.
Yeah, so heavy stuff.
She has a very, I don't know how to describe it, but her way with language is just so amazing.
She celebrates the sound of words too. She
Yeah.
really does.
She has a way of saying things that I've never heard anybody say before. I think, James, you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think that's, as a poet, what you search for is how to describe things in new ways so that people get the experience in a way that they never had it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to do, but it's really powerful when done effectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that takes a lifetime to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you have any more examples of other poets?
Oh, no, that's pretty much it.
That's okay. That's okay. We have batting cleanup today. Maureen Hurley.
Okay. Unmute. Oh, I'm unmuted already. Is that true? No.
What was that?
Okay, I'm unmuted. All right. I've had trouble joining, so I'm not too sure what all is working right now. I had so many poets to choose from, and so I decided to go back to a line that I unconsciously quoted the other day when I pulled over to take photos of flowers. I have not ever had luck sharing a screen, but let's see what happens. I chose Robert Duncan. And it shows basic at desktop. Yeah, I would imagine desktop. It's not going to show it. Oh dear. All right. I have basic Zoom and I'm not too sure if this is going to work. And I'm trying to say, okay, I'm going to do it. And then it denies itself. So this is going to be
The Zoom
embarrassing.
you have should have nothing to do with it. But if you can put the poem up on your screen that you see it.
And then okay, I'll open it and just see what happens. But I'm okay. At least I've dragged them to the desktop. Come on, Seabiscuit, you can do this. I trust you. New old computer, caught between systems, is really what this is about. All right.
If your computer's named Seabiscuit, that's an old computer.
It's an old computer, and my family, whenever they wanted to encourage somebody, guess what they yelled? Come on, Seabiscuit. That was before the movie. Now, if I do share screen, technically it should work.
Yeah, if you share screen, a box will come up and you should be able to select your page.
Okay, it says desktop. I'm selecting it. Nothing's happening though, is it? Allow Zoom to, yes. Okay, I have to open system preferences. That's what it is. I'm going to read it to you. It's called Often I Am Permitted to Return to a Meadow. And meanwhile, I'll see if I can double task. No, I don't want to leave meeting. See, that's the thing when you try to double task. Often I am permitted to return to a meadow. And I always heard this poem wrong, which is interesting. I heard it unto a meadow. As if it were a scene made up by the mind that is not mind, but is a made place that is mine. It is so near to the heart, an eternal pasture folded in all thought, so that there is a hall therein, that is a made place, created by light, where from the shadows that our forms fall. Where from fall did architectures I am. I say our likenesses from the first beloved, whose flowers are flames lit to the lady. She, it is queen under the hill, whose hosts are a disturbance of words within worlds, that is a field folded. It is only a dream of the grass blowing east against the source of the sun in an hour before the sun's going down, whose secrets we see in children's games of ring around the roses told. Often I am permitted to return to a meadow as if it were a given property of the mind, that certain bounds hold against chaos. That is a place of first permission, everlasting omen of what is.
Mm.
And I'm going to see if I can share it in the chat box, just because.
But the images were gorgeous, one right after the other.
Yeah, it's shocking, and I realized I hadn't seen it, actually sat down and read the poem until now. Can you guys see it in my chat box?
Mhm.
Okay, so I might have to resort to that. But I think for me, I'm sunk by beauty with the first line. Often I am permitted to return to a meadow, and the idea of that meadow being this metaphor for how to escape the chaos. And that's exactly what I do when I am with my camera on the road out there. I am trying to escape the chaos. And then I realize suddenly now, as I'm reading it, why I keep going back to that line. So I guess I'm only taking one line away from the poem, but it has me.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. It's just like Chuka saw the painted quality of a poem. You see the photographic quality of a poem,
Yeah.
right? That's your second eye.
My other eye.
Your other eye
In
is a.
fact, my other eye.
There's your other eye.
I am
Yeah.
never far from my other eye.
Yeah. So that
Once
is.
we were in Oaxaca, John Oliver Simon and I, and he reached up to get something off the shelf in the closet, and he knocked my camera to the floor and shattered the telephoto lens and the body. I cried. My eye was broken, I said.
Yeah.
So it looks like it works to share the poems in the chat, so I'll do that. My new to me computer is a 2012, so I'm moving up in life. My
Positively.
technology is improving. Let's see, did it type in? Okay. The second poem, unless anybody has anything else to say about this poem, the second poem I'd like to share that I keep coming back to is a Bob Hass poem, Meditation at Lagunitas. And of course, it's not working. Okay, Meditation at Lagunitas. Why? Okay, I don't know why it's not working.
I'll say this: Robert has scene awareness. I mean, there's scene awareness. The poet is aware of the scenes and consciously framing them, even in the. It looks like the shape of the poem.
Okay, this time the poem came up on my screen.
Yay.
What do you know? So now how do I make it go in the middle?
Well, we can see it. We're fine.
Oh, you're fine, but I'm not fine. That makes it even more interesting. All the new, I can do most of it by memory. All the new thing. Okay, Meditation at Lagunitas. Now, a disclaimer. I can drag it. Now I have transparent windows, which is actually bonkers. Okay.
Yeah,
I grew up in Lagunitas or Forest Knolls, depending on what side of the creek you want to talk in. So I always get a little bit feisty whenever anybody talks about my homeland. In fact, that's how I got into writing poetry. My boyfriend at the time dragged me to a poetry reading at College of Marin. And there was Gary Snyder reading this poem, and he got, things wrong. Okay. It was from Manzanita. And I kind of snippily said, I can do that. And that's exactly how I became a poet. So Bob Hass, who also grew up in San Rafael, so this is all people in the same county, wrote this poem, Meditation at Lagunitas, which I absolutely fell in love with, even if he couldn't get the directions of creeks and rivers right. But that was another essay that I wrote. Meditation at Lagunitas. All the new thinking is about loss. In this, it resembles all the old thinking. The idea, for example, that each particular erases the luminous clarity of a general idea. That the clown-faced woodpecker probing the dead sculpted trunk of that black birch is, by his presence, some tragic falling off from a first world of undivided light. Or the other notion that because there is in this world no one thing that to which the bramble of blackberry corresponds, a word is elegy to what it signifies. We talked about it late last night, and in the voice of my friend, there was a thin wire of grief, a tone almost querulous. After a while, I understood that talking this way, everything dissolves. Justice, pine, hair, woman, you and I. There was a woman I made love to, and I remember how, holding her small shoulders in my hands sometimes, I felt a violent wonder at her presence, like a thirst for salt, for my childhood river with its island willows, silly music from the pleasure boat, muddy places where we caught the little orange silver fish called pumpkin seed. It hardly had to do with her. Longing, we say, because desire is full of endless distances. I must have been the same to her, but I remember so much. The way her hands dismantled bread, the thing her father said that hurt her, and what she dreamed. There are moments when the body is as numinous as words, days that are the good flesh continuing. Such tenderness, those afternoons and evenings, saying, blackberry, blackberry, blackberry.
Mm.
Hmm.
So it's another one I come back to again and again, and I know it's terribly overused, but it is something that continues to haunt me. And I don't think it's just because it's the location of place that helps. For me, the lines I keep coming back to, the idea of all the new thinking is about loss in this, and it resembles all the old thinking. And here we are trying to cancel culture right, left, and center. And I know that, people are striving for a better place, a better world, but, sometimes I look at it and see the folly of what we've been doing. And what do you resort to? You resort to your childhood imagery or the place that will heal you. Again, going back to Robert Duncan's The Meadow, what do we carry with us into the future?
That's a great example of something a poem should be doing, meditating.
Yeah, and of course, we've got spirit rock and all that stuff out, my neck of the woods, which, all those things, make me grumpy because I don't want that to be part of my childhood landscape. I want to, to freeze it somehow in time and motion to when hardly anybody knew where it was.
But that's your poem.
Yeah, that's my poem, and that's why I write, probably. Just curiosity, I'm going to see if I can share a JPEG, and
You try.
I'm clicking on it. Is it working?
If it can be seen on your screen, it should be shareable on our screen.
All right. It's really delightful to be able to have the whole Zoom versus the iPad Zoom, which you just can't do some of this stuff. All right. I got a chance to hang out with Bei Dao at Poetry International, and he escaped Tiananmen Square because he was to read at Poetry International, and they had sent the ticket to him just as everybody was being rounded up. And so he wound up living in exile the rest of his life, and he wrote this poem in Chinese. We worked on it, translating it, and then also Homero Arages as well. And this one, he was so wistful of what he could capture, and he calls this one a picture. And Chan Chan which means gate gate, is his daughter, and he wrote this for her 5th birthday because he could not join her. Morning arrives in a sleeveless dress. Apples tumble all over the earth. My daughter is drawing a picture. How vast is a 5-year-old sky? Your name has 2 windows. One opens toward a sun with no clock hands. The other opens toward your father, who has become a hedgehog in exile, taking with him a few unintelligible characters and a bright red apple. He has left your painting. How vast is a 5-year-old sky? So, nostalgia. But this, because as Dawn knows, I do poets in the schools I teach. So this is one poem I bring in about halfway through, and just talking about the power of poetry and of resistance, and he continued to write despite the fact that he was on a wanted list. I have many poets that I am fond of for that reason as well. And Omero Arajas is one of those too. So the idea of poetry of dissent is really important to me. And like, how do you bring it into the classroom? Like Nazim Hikmet, Things I Didn't Know I Loved, for example. But that's a really long poem. I didn't want to bring that in.
Were you able to show the JPEG?
Can you guys see it?
No, we don't see anything.
Okay, the JPEG is the poem. It is literally something I scanned. It says that where I read. You don't see the poem?
No.
Oh, okay, so it cannot. So we now know that it cannot share the JPEGs. Okay. Interesting, huh?
Perplexing. We have to figure this out.
And there's no way I can send a JPEG via the chat, and I don't have the text here because I'm on the wrong computer. I've since the coronavirus, I have scanned everything. Well, it's not just because of the coronavirus, but because I'm living in a fire zone. I decided to scan all my lessons. So
you don't want to lose it.
most of them exist in JPEG format, and I've been slowly pulling them over with, it's a long process. First I take it and I have scan it, and then I have to OCR it, and then I reformat it, and then I make a PDF so I can use it teaching with teachers. And it's just that's one of the things that I just haven't gotten around to submitting to the technological world yet. It's halfway there.
You can share a JPEG. Anything that you can show yourself on your screen, you can share.
A JPEG?
Yeah.
Well, I could hold it up, but then it's on the computer.
Yeah, but anything that your computer displays in front of you.
I'll try it again. Okay.
Using the screen share.
Okay. Can you see it now? Oh, you can see it. Okay, for some reason it wasn't showing up earlier. Okay. I'm noticing also that Zoom really changes its format when the screen share. That's good to know. So you can all see the JPEG now then?
I can.
Okay, so one person can see it? That's it?
I see it.
Okay, if I could, I would send it to you. I will
I can see
challenge
it. I can
small
see
doves to carry it to you, but I want my computer back.
This is good enough.
I said, Dawn, you might have to take a shot of it and share it with everyone.
It's recorded now. It's going to be on YouTube in a few hours.
Oh, okay. So then it's all worked. Shall I read the last one, or is somebody else ready to go?
Go ahead and read it, and then we'll ask
Okay.
Jackie to finish up.
Okay. So I was in Amsterdam for quite some time, and I had met all these poets through Poetry International in Rotterdam, and I participated in it a few seasons. And Omero Arajas was another poet, and we translated this. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Monte Alban. Here light fell. Here darkness became stone, dust, and clay, bone and skull. Here the air became bird, flight a tree, hunger a man. The valley escapes and the mountains rain green. Here man returned to mud went back to the silence, penetrated the night.
Yeah, this has got a great sound value as well.
Yeah.
Lo siento, I don't have the Spanish version here in my teaching notes. So he's probably the one who single-handedly helped to save the monarchs in Mexico. He became an ecologist poet, and he did a lot of work with saving the whales, but the monarchs are probably his call to how a poet can change the world.
And on that happy note, we turn to Jackie Chou.
Okay.
Thank you all for
Larry.
Okay. I
technological.
think I got this. Yeah.
So go ahead and there we go.
So this, okay, I think I got this time. Okay, document, storage. Oh, download. Mirror, that's the name of the poem, Mirror. Oh, okay, here it is. Mirror by Sylvia Plath. Okay.
There we go.
Mirror, I am silver and exact. I have no preconceptions. Whatever you see, I swallow immediately. Just as it is, unmisted by love or dislike. I am not cruel, only truthful. The eye of a little god, four-cornered. Most of the time I meditate on the opposite wall. It is pink with speckles. I have looked at it long enough. I have looked at it, but it flickers. Faces and darkness separate us over and over. Now I am a lake. A woman bends over me, searching my reaches for what she really is. Then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon. I see her back and reflect it faithfully. She rewards me with tears and an agitation of hands. I am important to her. She comes and goes. Every morning it is her face that replaces the darkness. In me, she has drowned a young girl, and in me, an old woman. Rises toward her day after day, like a terrible fish.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh yeah. I remember seeing this one in college. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Like I said earlier, her writing changed from her older works to her more recent ones. And this one was written before she 2 years before she committed suicide. Yeah, this is not, I like this one because after she wrote, what was I gonna say? I like this one because it's not as confessional as her later works, which were written right before she died.
Right. Yet you read into the poem, there's a lot to see in terms of her emotion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of a dark emotion throughout.
Mm-hmm. I am not cruel, only truthful. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like how she can take little things like images from everyday life and turn it into something very beautiful. She could write about cutting an onion. She could write about, you know, a lot of things, not like very political, even though in some of her poems she mentions the war, but she can also make something meaningful out of anything.
Well, she can do a metaphor that is kind of two-fisted, right? The mirror is a lake,
Yeah.
And the mirror is personified. So the mirror is also a person.
Yes.
And one of my favorite lines is, then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon.
Yeah.
It always gets me, that line. That is really
Yeah.
so loaded. And of course, the best line is the last line. Oh my God. That's enough to make anyone consider the other world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Around a young girl. Mm.
She's a dark soul.
Yeah, fantastic example.
Yeah.
You have any others, or?
No, I only downloaded this one.
Well, a fine example, that's for sure. All right,
Yeah.
then we're gonna wrap things up. I'm sure we've gone over an hour.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think we went an hour and a half.
Yeah, we did. 133, as my grandmother would say.
Yeah, time flies when you're doing something you're enjoying.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you
for being
all.
here. Oh yeah, go ahead. She's saying thank you all too. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Jackie's already absconded because of bandwidth. And Chuka and James and Maureen, thank you so much
The
for being
absconders, that's what we are.
here. And I'm gonna stop the recording so we can speak freely now.